14% of teens feel like they can talk with a trusted adult about technology. Only 14%. The average age of first pornography exposure is between the ages of 9 and 12. Technology is the number one battleground between kids and parents at home. 86% of today's youth say when they grow up, they want to be a social media influencer.
Well, hi, Jamie. I'm so glad you're with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, we have a deep interest. I would say interest is an understatement, but not quite obsession. Somewhere in between interest and obsession in the work that you do. And I just can't wait to dive into this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm excited to get into it with you.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a benign question, though, to start off with.
Okay.
And here it is. What is your favorite thing? We're in the fall season right now. What's your favorite thing about fall?
Ooh, I think maybe sweatpants and like soup season. Like it's an easy dinner to make for all of my family and it's cozy and good. So I think I'm ready to turn the page on the other recipes and move into soup season.
I love that. Okay, what's your favorite soup or your family's favorite soup?
Oh, well, I did make white chicken chili last night, so that's kind of fresh in my brain. And I don't know if it's like this where you live, but it's a Midwest thing to serve chili with cinnamon rolls. Like instead of cornbread, I know it's random, but I think I really love it because then it gives me an excuse to have cinnamon rolls for dinner. So I like to pair that with any soup that I can.
Oh my goodness. I can smell the cinnamon from here. Like my brain is doing stuff right now, then there's no food in sight. So yeah, that's so cool. Yeah. Okay. Why is it called white chicken chili? What was that?
It's like white beans and chicken and then more like a chicken broth based instead of like a beef or like tomato-y chili. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to get that recipe from you.
Yes, I will share
it. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so would you tell us about Screen Sanity, how it got started, and how you got involved?
Yes, I would love to. So Screen Sanity was founded in 2018 by two moms here in Kansas City that kind of started to notice conversations with people around them, just kind of around the tensions and struggles that people and families were kind of experiencing around tech and really not knowing where to turn. We often talk about as parents, like when things come up in parenting, we would go to our parents, right? And be like, Mom, I don't know what to do. The baby's not latching or, whatever. And, we're all really digital natives in this. There's not really a lot of people that have gone before us in this tech world. There's no what to expect when tech-specting. That's what we say. So, they really saw a need for, okay, how can we kind of help support families and learn more about all of this together in just the digital world that we're navigating? And so Screen Sanity's goal is to help families and communities pursue digital health in order to reduce loneliness, depression, anxiety, and suicide in a socially isolated society. And we provide trainings, tools, and tips to kind of help families maximize the benefits of technology while minimizing some of those side effects. And so ultimately, our mission is to build a world where kids stay captivated by life and not screens, and to just help support families on every leg of their digital journey. So that's kind of how our foundation got started. Yeah.
That's so cool. I just want to stop you right there because I think sometimes some of us, when we hear about like putting limits on screens and that kind of thing, we feel it from like an authoritative place or from like a parental place. And we want to like rebel against that a little bit, or we want to say, well, I'm independent, or you can't tell me what to do or whatever. But actually what I'm hearing in your mission is like you care about people's mental health. Mm-hmm. And you want to fight isolation and you want to build relationships that happen in person and with people.
Yes, absolutely. And Screen Sanity as a whole, we love technology. We are not anti-technology, right? That's how you and me are able to have this conversation right now. I mean,
Literally.
technology is an amazing thing, but I think around it, there has just been some unintended side effects that people haven't realized are a result of it. So how can we look at those? How can we minimize those? Still maximizing the awesome things that we can do, but really looking how we can minimize some of those side effects. And a lot of those are around mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, because of the impact that it's having on, I mean, we can see the stats. We'll get into that in just a minute. So how did you yourself how long have you been involved with Screen Sanity, and how did you get involved?
Yeah, so I actually first was exposed to Screen Sanity as a parent. So I went to a night at our church where they were having kind of a parent night, where our founder Tracy was presenting. And it was before COVID. And so my kids were younger then. We weren't really entering in a digital time yet. And I should preface that too. I am a mom. I have a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So I am in the thick and throes of the technology world alongside all the other parents that are probably listening. So I was exposed to it early on, and I was really thankful that I heard it early on, because it really laid a roadmap for me of what I wanted to, like, our family's tech life to look like as we started to go towards those years where we would be introducing devices. And so after I did that, I would just kind of meet with Tracy randomly, and we'd have coffee and catch up on the mission. And I'm a licensed social worker. And so as we were having these conversations, I kept looking at it as a lens of, okay, what about all these families and kids that don't have active parental figures, right? They're in foster care. Grandma and grandpa are taking care of them. Parents that aren't able to just go attend a parent night kit at a church. How are we going to get our information and resources out to them? And so that's kind of how our social work program was born. Is looking at ways that we could get our resources. And then we created a training for mental health therapists. So we go out into the community and offer trainings to therapists that they can be also looking at the clients that they're serving from a digital lens too. How are our clients' tech lives and habits, how are we seeing that play out in relation to the mental health symptoms that they're presenting with? So that's kind of how, so then I became on staff, and it's just become a passion. So
I love I'm a social worker as well, and that's my background and my history and that kind of thing. And so I love that you're hitting this from like a mental health point of view and like really wanting to engage with folks that are impacting, be it therapists or, so many different people in kids' lives that impact kids' mental health, right? So, and I love that you mentioned, kids in foster care, kids with less maybe or different forms of parental supervision. And I mean, it just sounds like you guys are really hitting so many different audiences, and that's really exciting. So how tell me like some impact of like how many therapists have you gotten to in your area, or what's your like just in the last month or two?
Well, and I should share too. So a third component of Screen Sanity that is our newest program is a pediatrician program as well. So we now have a nurse practitioner on staff that she goes into pediatrician offices and trains them with resources as well, because research tells us that if a physician says it, it's even more impactful than anywhere else. And so they were coming to us saying, okay, we know we need to have this conversation, in the short time that we have when we're seeing patients, but we don't know how to. And so that's kind of where we've come in to train them. And so we've hit several major school districts here in Kansas City, like doing professional development days for their school counselors and social workers. So kind of looking at it during the educational hours. And then also have hit a bunch of different community mental health centers, private practices, and just really trying to get it out there to the most amount of mental health professionals so that they can be implementing it in their practice.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And have you gotten feedback from people that are utilizing some of your practices, specifically with like therapists?
Yes, we absolutely have. We have several really great resources that are on our website, screensanity.org, that are meant to be used either like at home if a parent or caregiver wants to go through it or walk through it with their child, but it also can be used in a therapeutic setting. So one that's coming to mind right now is called the Social Media Playbook. And I kind of think about it as like a strengths perspective or like motivational interviewing kind of therapeutic intervention. It really asks mindful questions that gets teens and kids to think about, what is my social media life going to look like? What am I hoping to portray on there? What are my values personally? And then how am I going to portray that online? Or thinking about, what accounts do I follow that make me feel good about myself? And then what accounts do I follow that make me not feel good about myself? And so it's easy for parents to go through because sometimes it's hard for us as parents, especially if you're not a mental health professional. You're like, I don't know the questions to ask. I don't know how to get my kids to talk about this. And so it's really self-explanatory and kind of just ask the questions for you. And so that's why I think it's really helpful for parents. And then mental health professionals are also using that like in group therapy settings as well with adolescents that they're serving, or even one-on-one if they're just hearing it come up kind of organically in their sessions.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, I want to come back to maybe some stories of hope that have, that you've seen, but do you have resources for adults, or is this mainly for kids, or how does that work?
The resources that we have are for parents as adults, if you think about it, for them to be thinking about how to use and implement in their family. But part of our whole program model is we use an acronym that's called START, START, and each of those letters stand for something else. But the S at the very beginning stands for start with yourself. So that is, where are we as adults? What does our digital life look like? And we need to be aware of that because our kids are seeing that, right? They're modeling what we do. And so that's a big thing that we talk about in our parent nights when we get groups of parents together in community to kind of go over all of this and give them a chance to talk with each other, to say, hey, what are you seeing in your home? And here's what I'm seeing, and what are you doing? And, it just really creates that sense of community of, we are not in this alone, even though it sometimes feels like we are. Nobody knows what to do, right? It's something that we all are trying to learn more about and walk through. And so the resources there are, like I said, it's kind of intended for adults to be able to look at and go through and think about, but it also ultimately goes back to, okay, what are we doing ourselves?
Sure.
As adults.
Right. So that does address our stuff as well, right? Because I obviously, if I choose to eat with my feet on the table, which is fine for people to do that, then it's certainly going to open the door for my kids to eat with their feet on the table. And so if that's something we, like a culture we want to have, or we're just like a feet on the table family, great. Mm-hmm. But the same thing is true for screens, phones, computers, all the things. And so like whatever we're doing, whether we want to or not, we're modeling what, our kids are seeing and potentially could be their behavior as well. So I love that you're like, start with myself, mm-hmm. because it's easy for us to like point the finger and say, well, you need to do this, but actually, what do I need to do? What are my action steps here? So
right. And we have this study that we read that was, and I think it just hits home to how impactful it is as adults. But so in 2017, the city of Boston, they put out like a survey to kids of like, if we were going to create the coolest playground ever, what would you want in the playground? And they're expecting them to write like a tall slide, a tire swing, all these cool things that we would think. And the number one thing kids wrote was a locker for my parents to put their phones. And that, it to me, is just so impactful that they are watching, our children are watching, and if we are constantly, we call it fubbing, you snub someone with your phone. So if you're sitting with them face to face, but I'm doing this instead of looking at you, we're fubbing them. If you're constantly doing that with your kids, then they start to believe that that is more important than them, right? And so it really is I'm always like, oh my gosh, this really just hits home. And I have to even rethink myself. What are my habits at home? And what am I modeling and teaching my kids?
Absolutely. Okay, so I would love to hear some of your statistics about how screens are impacting mental health for kids, teens, adults, whatever stats you've got. Hit us with it.
Yep. So when we do our parent nights, which I kind of spoke about earlier, we usually kind of share these statistics at the beginning and then we let parents sit and kind of talk together about what they just heard. So I'll read the ones that we share. And then if there's any that you want to go back and talk about, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay, so 14% of teens feel like they can talk with a trusted adult about technology. Only 14%. The average age of first pornography exposure is between the ages of 9 and 12. Technology is the number one battleground between kids and parents at home. 86% of today's youth say when they grow up, they want to be a social media influencer.
Wow.
Right? Where like we would want to be a social worker or a doctor or a veterinarian or whatever. They say they want to be a social media influencer.
Wow.
And then the last one that really kind of ties into mental health as well is 80% of teens report checking their phones throughout the night when they're supposed to be sleeping.
Oh, wow. I'm making some notes here. Okay. So if 14%, only 14% feel like they can talk to a trusted adult. Wow, we've got work to do.
And that's where, honestly, the social work program was born out of for me in my mind. When I heard that statistic, I'm like, who is going to be talking to these youth? It can't just be parents, right? It has to be other trusted adults.
Right.
And so how are we going to up that number? And that's also one of the biggest things, I think, if people can't take anything else away from any of the tips that we provide or like changes to consider in your family, conversation is the number one thing I would say take away if you can't implement anything else. Just starting those conversations with your kids. Because what's going to happen with that is they're building trust with you. And so when those big things do come up or happen online, they're going to feel safe and unashamed to be able to come back to you and say, hey, mom, I got into this situation online. I need your help. You know, you've already opened the door to that conversation. They already know you can handle it. You've had the hard conversations. And so that's one of my biggest takeaways is if you can't do anything else, just start the conversations with your kids.
Yeah, and this is bringing up, gosh, we have 5 kids, and I can say that technology and driving were the 2 things that we had the lead. Like, we're here for hard conversations. We're here for, hard days, bad days. We're here for it. But technology was at the top of like the stuff that was just complicated and hard to deal with. And I would say as a parent, I don't know that I did it right. Like I look back and I'm like, I don't know, you're just kind of trying to do the best you can. And I loved your point about we don't have like pioneers that went before us that could say, oh, well, here's how and we're all just sort of trying to figure it out, which is why we're so glad for organizations like yours. But there was, I would say the 2010s, maybe some of the 2000s, but especially 2010s, like the concept that I remember as a parent was we need to lock things down, right? There are all these, firewall blocking, sorts of things. We even, which I'm sure is very unpopular to hear, but we would like take Safari off of our kids' phones. I don't even know if that's possible today because there's so much school that's accessed through like, here's a link and you need a Safari to pull up the link. So I don't even know if that's possible today. But so in the 2010s, it was much more like block stuff, keep it out, like prevent it from ever coming into your home or your screen. And so how is today different than that other than like the obvious, like it's just everywhere and it's hard to block. Like what would you say to some of that?
Right. It is hard. And so back to that START acronym that I said, the A in START is actually accountability. And that kind of, we offer different resources on our website too about ways to kind of create some of those barriers that you are talking about. If you want to have, filters or different, things like at like a router or like a DNS level, ways to kind of walk you through how to set those up in your home. But like you're saying, those things are great and they are protective barriers, but they're not perfect, right? And so that's where I always say, those filters are great, but ultimately what we want to be creating the most is an internal filter within our kids. Inside of them, internally, when they see things, when they think about posting things, can we get them to be thinking about, why am I posting this? Who is this going to impact? What I just saw, was that appropriate or was that inappropriate? Or teaching them around things. Hey, if you do ever see XYZ online, you need to come and tell me so that I can process that with you, right? So not only those like external filters, but being able to create an internal filter within our kids that creates in them, hey, this doesn't feel right. Or, I don't know that I should have looked at that or that I should have posted that. And then again, we've hopefully already created that relationship where they feel like they can come back into and approach us, without shame and being able to help us, have us help them walk through whatever they just experienced online.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that's coming to mind is, say I'm a kid or a teen and I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, well, I'm not sure that I want to be having those conversations with my parent or trust it, or maybe my, my caregiver or my parent is not as available to, if I'm a kid and I'm hearing these stats and stuff, but I want to do right. I know this doesn't feel right. What sort of resources would you give or suggestions for the kid themselves? Is that part of the acronym?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say for the kid, kudos to them for taking the accountability themselves too. That's incredible. And if they can't think of any trusted adult in their life, even if it's not a parent, is it a teacher? Is it a coach? Is it your music teacher? Just if there's someone that they trust, even if it's not mom or dad or grandma and grandpa, is there anyone that they could go to? That, or school counselor, right? That's in all of our schools. That would be a place to start. Or even if they have a trusted friend that, they're comfortable sharing with them and know that they're going to be a friend that's going to maybe support and guide them to do the right thing. That's not a bad thing either. I've had instances with my own child that people have shared things with him in confidence and he didn't know what to do with it, but he knew I did. So he was able to come to me and say, hey, this person shared this. I don't know what to do with it. Can you help me walk through that? So even if it's not a direct adult right in their life, is there someone down the pipeline that they know is going to be able to support and encourage to make the right choice in that way?
Okay. Awesome. I feel like I'm getting there's so much I want to talk about.
There's I know.
Tangent. So, okay. Coming sort of back to what we were talking about in terms of, oh gosh, now I've lost it. It was, you were creating the internal filter. We want the kids to do it, to have their own sense of what is, what is good for my brain, what is not good for my brain, and having them, but having that trusted adult or maybe another kid if that kid has a resource and an adult perhaps. But somewhere in here, we've got adults involved, is what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yep. And going back to the statistic too of 80% of teens report checking their phones through the night. We know as mental health providers that sleep is such a protective factor in mental health, right? So if we know there's no way our kids are sleeping all night if they're checking their phone. They're not getting good quality sleep. And that's what's going to set them up for academic success and hopefully some mental health, reduce mental health symptoms, things like that. And so that's the T. One of the T's in our START acronym is tables and bedtimes. So if there's anywhere else that you can think about, where can we create kind of some device-free zones for our family, we would recommend tables when you have a meal or bedtimes. Like the table doesn't have to be all 5 of us are sitting down and my mom cooked this perfect meal. I mean, it can be Chick-fil-A in the car going from soccer practice to band, and just saying, hey, buddy, let's put our phones on the front seat while we drive right now. And that's a great way to facilitate that meaningful connection by putting the device away. It can be so simple as that. Or even bringing your kids into it, and asking them, hey, do you guys have any idea? Like, sometimes I like to put it on myself too. Hey, I notice I'm really struggling with checking my phone at night, or I'm on this thing all the time, and I feel like we should just think about a way as a family, like what's one thing or place that we could do where we put our phones away. And I think that people will find that kids, the first dinner or two might be like, you get the groans because nobody's used to it. But then you get to the point that they like it and they look forward to it and they hold you accountable. I mean, I'll have instances where I'm cooking and it is a night that I happen to cook and we're not running. And one of the kids is on an iPad and we're getting ready to start dinner. And the other kid's saying to him, hey, it's time to turn off your iPad. We're eating dinner. And it becomes like they keep each other accountable too, because they like the connection. That's what we are called for as humans, is to have connection and belonging and love.
Absolutely. Oh, I love it. It's so great when kids are involved in the decision making and then involved in how to, implement this, and also when they're involved in creating that family culture around the dinner table, or like you said, in the car on the way to soccer practice or whatever. So part of what this is like, coming back from some of the tangents. So in the 2010s, there was this block it, like just block it and stay involved with your kids, stay accessible. But now I feel like that's even harder to block. And so how would you, and you've got a website full of resources. We're going to have those links, and we really want people to jump in and really access all of those resources that you have for them. But just like in a succinct way, how would you say, like, the percentage or whatever between just blocking stuff and also creating conversations and creating openness with your kids about, like, how do those work together today?
And I don't think there's a perfect recipe, right? I think every family's different. I think the reasons that people have phones or certain social media apps are different for everybody, right? Some people, they actually need it because that's how they find out when band practice is, because they're posting it on whatever. Some people, it's, I'm just going to mindlessly scroll. So when I give any sort of tips, it's all to be, shaped into what works for you and your family and your kids, because everybody's different, and even your own children in your family. I'm sure you know that, having 5 kids, like, what tech life looks like with my boys is also different than with my daughter because of just who they are. And so, there's no perfect like recipe with that. I'm trying to think back to what you originally asked me about. How much you block and how much you allow. And again, it's also, the world we live in is really hard to just say, well, you're not going to have a phone, you're not going to have any social media, I'm not allowing any of it, right? And so that's just not the reality of the way our world works. And so again, for me, the conversations around my why is what's helpful with my kids. So not just saying, no, you're not having Snapchat. It's, here's why. I educate on the things that can come along with that. And then explain my why. And I feel like my older kids, they understand more because I'm able to put it in simpler terms of, this is how I'm protecting you. And it's not that you're never going to have it. It's just not right now. We're waiting until we get to kind of an age appropriate age. And so, another thing I think about too with kind of middle schoolers and teens is, where can we give them more freedom? Because you don't want to be always saying no as a parent, right? Because then they feel powerless. They feel like they don't have a voice in anything. They can't do anything. And that's not the goal. So for me, I try to think about where can I say yes more to continue to say no where I really care to say no. And for me, that's in some of the kind of tech things with, the Snapchat and things like that. And I don't know, have you read The Anxious Generation?
It's sitting on my shelf.
Okay.
It needs to be read, but yes,
well, you have
I know
to
what you're
read it.
talking
It is so phenomenal. And I don't want to speak on behalf of him or his book, but his whole kind of philosophy is how we as a society right now are overprotecting so much in the real world and underprotecting in the online world, where really it should be flipped. Like the odds of your daughter being kidnapped on her bike, riding the bike around the neighborhood are very small. Very small. But the odds of her coming into contact with a stranger on an online platform are very high. So, I just try to keep that in my mind as like a mindset too with my kids of where can I give them a little more freedom in the real world and continue to kind of overprotect in that online world where we're not ready to step into yet.